The stakes are really high. We need to ensure that people in this province have the fundamentals taken care of, so they don't have to pay for things like healthcare and dental care, so they don't have to worry about the shape their parents are in and their loved ones in long-term care and home care, so that they can build an affordable life and get back on their feet, because that's what this province can do, and that's what we are committing to as New Democrats in this election. Thanks, everybody.
Well, everybody knows that the Ontario election is now, less than a month away?
Yes, and now it's time for campaign promises.
The politicians are politicking.
They're coming out of the woodwork.
Including Andrea Horwath and the NDP.
Yeah, who released their campaign this week from the Distillery District.
Yeah, in Toronto, and they are actually the first party to release their entire platform. So we're going to break down what that means for you, including all the different sectors. That includes every area of your life.
Yeah, and all the different highlights that we think are important for you guys to know.
But before we do that, we needed to do a few things, like subscribing to this channel, tapping that notification bell,
smashing the like button, and following us across all of our social media. Those details are in the description below. If you're not already following us, what are you doing?
Literally, what are you doing with your life? Anyhow, we know what Andrea Horwath and the NDP are doing. They are vying for your vote. They want to become not just the official opposition anymore. They're vying for
the top spot.
The top spot. She wants the premier's office.
She wants to be in charge.
This will be, I think, her 4th time running, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so as well, and she's been a very, very vocal opponent of Doug Ford over his entire term.
Yeah, and some people have said that maybe too vocal in terms of opposition, but hey, that's what some people have said,
nor there.
right? But some people are also very upset with Doug Ford. So let's talk about what the NDP are looking to do for the people of Ontario. So let's get into healthcare. It's the biggest item on the provincial budget. They spend the most money, amount of money on healthcare.
And we know the NDP love healthcare,
they
right?
Really
That's a
do.
huge part of their campaign platforms every single time.
So here's some of the things that they are promising. They're promising to establish a universal, publicly funded mental health care program, which is quite interesting. They're looking to invest $130 million over 3 years for children's mental health.
Which is really cool, because we've been talking so much recently, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, about the importance of mental health and taking care of your brain. And now there's actually, like, you're seeing it in the campaign platforms, the ways that they're planning on doing this.
100%. Autism, another big plank of their healthcare promises, because they want to make the Ontario Autism Program fully needs-based with no caps, which is a big deal for parents who are either on the wait list, with their kids on the wait list, or who are part of the program, but obviously don't have enough money to cover the costs of all the programming needs for their children.
For sure.
Okay, but there's also a big thing. They want to hire a lot of workers.
Yeah, so like 10,000 personal support workers. They want to give them a raise. They also want to hire 30,000 nurses, and they want to get rid of Bill 124, which is huge, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of criticisms from healthcare workers, especially nurses, about this bill, because it limits the amount of pay increases they can get per year, and it limits their negotiation power. So interesting to see how healthcare workers feel about this, but how the general public feels about healthcare. Let's move on to housing.
Yes.
Big topic. We know how expensive it is in this province to buy a home, or even
especially
rent.
here in the city, right?
Yeah.
We have an affordability crisis for housing.
We definitely do. So what does the NDP want to do?
Yeah, so they're saying they want to build 100,000 units of social housing over the next 10 years, and they want to update 260,000 social housing units to extend their lifespan, make them last a little bit longer. And then they're also looking to end exclusionary zoning and bring back rent control, which is really cool.
And that rent control, we asked that question on Instagram on our Brandon Gona Show IG account, and that was a very popular, people responded well to that.
Yes.
They wanted to see that. So I wonder how they're thinking now about the fact that the NDP has included it in their platform.
Well, because like you said, right, it's not just buying a house that's getting expensive. When you're seeing a one-bedroom apartment average of almost $2,000 or over $2,000, like how do you afford that? Where are you gonna live?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about workers, because workers, anybody who's a worker in this province is working hard. Yeah. So shout out to you for trying to earn that honest living.
And there's been so much talk about minimum wage increases and how $15 isn't enough. It's not cutting it, right?
Well, the NDP, they want to raise it to $16 by the end of this year if they're elected, and they want to get it up to $20 per hour by 2026. They also want to legislate 10 permanent personal emergency leave days.
That's cool.
Which is really interesting, because right now, of course, if any worker who isn't protected by a union or doesn't have a company mandated leave of absence, well, they don't have the ability to take that time off, or any paid time off for that matter. So interesting. But
they also want to implement the 4-day work week.
Yes, I almost forgot about that. Okay. And that's been also talked about very popularly across all social media platforms. So we'll see.
And the Liberals were saying as well that was something, like they haven't released their platform, but that was a big thing they were talking about doing as well.
Yes, they have. Interesting. Okay, well, let's talk about the environment.
Yes, so they want to create a zero emissions vehicle strategy with the goal of all vehicles, all new vehicle sales being ZEFs by 2035.
So zero emission vehicles, basically?
Yeah, and they're looking at offering a $10,000 incentive for those electric vehicles as well.
Okay, so that's a big incentive if you're looking to buy an electric car, because electric cars are not cheap.
Nope.
Alrighty.
They are not.
Also should add about the environment, the NDP, they want to expand the green belt.
Yeah, they want to plant 1 billion trees by 2030.
Yeah, and so what's interesting about that, a lot of people say that the green belt, because it restricts the development of land around the Greater Toronto area, that has potentially contributed to the increase in housing costs because there's a scarcity, a limited amount of land that you can build on. Now, we know that Doug Ford's government has started opening up the green belt a little bit to development, but still we haven't seen a decrease in housing prices.
But what's interesting about that is people aren't too happy about that either. Now, I'm not a politician. I don't know what the answer is when it comes to the green belt, but there's been a lot of debate about opening up the green belt as well. But something else that's really cool that they're talking about with the environment is actually getting rid of non-medical single-use plastics in just 2 years by 2024.
That would be a game changer and a whole lifestyle change for a lot of people across
in
Ontario.
every aspect, from like think about all the different ways that you have single-use plastics.
How do you guys feel about that, by the way? Let us know in the comments section. All right, let's move over to education because they have some big plans for the education sector.
Yes, so they want to restore the previous government's free tuition program and convert post-secondary student loans to grants.
That is interesting.
It is, because think about how much it'll improve, like if that were to happen, people being able to go to school, increasing education, and then increasing
Access.
Help me here. Yeah, access to that education.
Well, Doug Ford took a lot of flack when he cut OSAP, right? And took away a lot of those grants and those programs for low-income people to get into post-secondary free of charge. NDP, they want to bring that back. They also want to restore the previous government's free tuition program. So again, interesting take there for students. Oh, you did say that? Okay, well good, that Bruce is going to cut it. Okay. Not me repeating your promises of the NDP. All right, let's talk about BIPOC and racism promises, or to end racism, I should say.
Yeah.
So it looks like the NDP, they want to implement the United Nations declarations on the rights of Indigenous peoples.
Which is huge.
Okay.
And then they also want to implement a provincial anti-racism strategy and appoint a minister responsible for anti-racism.
Okay. Well, that really hasn't been done in Ontario, I don't believe, before.
I don't believe so either. So that could be interesting to see if that role were to come into play, what kind of work that minister would be doing.
Yeah. What would
because we have ministers of diversity and inclusion, so you would think that would fall under that umbrella, but maybe not.
Yeah, and what would their mandate be, and how would they implement that mandate, and what would when you look at somebody who has a job like that, how do you measure success?
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
We'll have to see. Okay, outside of all of those big topics, there are some other big promises that they made, including the fact that they want to regulate gas prices. This is something that Andrea Horwath has said that she wanted to do, especially with the massive increase in gas prices.
Because they keep on going up, right?
But will that actually work? Because there are several provinces right now who have that in place. We've talked about this before.
For sure, with her.
Right, with her. And those gas prices in those provinces are still almost the same, if not higher, than Ontario.
I think this would help more so with say you're in Northern Ontario, the price of gas in Northern Ontario being similar to the price of gas in Toronto. So those people aren't being extorted and vice versa kind of thing. I think this would help with that.
Well, we will have to see. Another promise that they're making is that they want to update and enforce the Pay Transparency Act, which is interesting because would this apply to the public sector, meaning government institutions, or would this be universal, meaning private companies would have to, adhere to this and reveal what they're paying
That's a good question.
women and men and what the gap potentially might be there.
And then women and men would have to make dollar for dollar. And that's what we like to see. How about that? They also want to make prescription contraception free, so birth control, and then fund 10 days of paid leave for women escaping violence.
Interesting.
So you're not worried about having to go to work while you're fleeing domestic abuse or a violent situation, which I think is very important. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well if they are voted in.
And then another big promise is the freezing of taxes for low and middle income families who make less than $200,000 per household. So listen, these are a lot of promises. There's a lot of hiring here. This is going to come with a lot of expenses. Andrea Horwath has been asked how she's going to pay for all of this. She kind of dodged that question, but I mean, a lot of people are also saying listen, the current progressive conservative government, Doug Ford's government that's in power, they've been running massive deficits as well. So you can't really say at this point that any one party spends more than the other when every party, liberal, progressive conservative, or potentially the NDP, all want to spend a bunch of money.
Well, and honestly, like for us, this isn't our first rodeo, right? Like this isn't the first election either of us have covered. And for you guys watching, it's definitely not the first election you've lived through. So we all know that this is how this kind of progresses, right? Everybody's making promises, and then everybody else is, well, how are you going to pay for that?
Yeah.
You know, like that's just kind of that's how it goes in election season.
Well, I think it's great that we broke down the big promises. We want to hear from you guys. How do you feel about this? Are you happy with the NDP platform? Are you opposed to it? Do you think they have a chance of winning? We also want to highlight this, that we are planning on having each of the leaders on the show. We're going to invite all of them. And most of them we're expecting will say yes. Those who do not appear means that they said no. Yeah. And that would be quite interesting.
Because everybody's getting an invite.
Everybody. So you might want to make sure you keep it locked to the channel. And again, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Great job, Dev.
But before you go, make sure that you're subscribing to this channel, smashing that like button, following us across all of our social media, the details in the description below, and hitting the notification bell.
There you go.
Hey.
Hey BG Squad, thanks so much for checking out our channel. And listen to this, we have more great content for you, like this video right here and this video right here. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to this channel right now and tap that notification bell.